Hi, Chuck Brewer, Director of Operations for Concrete Technologies. Today we're shooting another tech tip video. This one's going to be on the Duraflake 5000 series. We're actually going to be incorporating some patterns into the Duraflake using our special tapes, also using some of our upgraded sealers. Just like with the other floor systems that we do, you have to prep the concrete. We're going to be vacuum grinding in here today to keep the dust down. Also, we can't break out a power washer in here because the water can cause a problem with the drywall. Occasionally, you might run into some paint chips, caulk, or debris along the edges that your grinder can't actually get to. A putty knife is the tool you want to use to get that loose stuff off. Just as an added precaution, we've taken some 2-inch wide painter's tape and actually gone around the door jamb. What it does is it actually helps prevent some of the dust and some of the fumes from being drawn into the home while we're working. With the air conditioning on, it will form some sort of a suction or a draw and can pull some of the fumes or dust in. So just as an added protection, remember to always tape up the door jambs leading into the rooms where you're going to be working. Even though we used a vacuum grinding system on the floor, we always want to go through and sweep the floor after the fact to pick up some of the dust the vacuum attachment didn't get. Then we're going to broom and blow the thing out once more, and we're ready to roll. Now that the floor has been broomed down, blown out, and is dust-free, our next step is to actually put up our shields. Unlike with our Hallmark system where we're shooting liquid cement, we have to paper 36 inches up the wall. With this, all we've got to do is basically put 4-inch wide masking tape or painter's tape along the border, so when we bring the roller up along the edge, the epoxy binder is not going to get up on the wall. All we need is that little 4-inch buffer. One of the things you want to make sure you do on any job is to make sure you've got your tools and your equipment organized. And what I mean by that is making sure that you've got your 5000 binder A's and B's together. We're going to be using a number of different components on this job. 5000, 270, 6000, all of which have an A and B component. So make sure before you start mixing anything, you go through your materials, make sure the right A's and B's are stacked together before you blend up anything and put it down on the job. Secondly, make sure that you've got your rollers taped and ready to go. Make sure you've got your mixing buckets all set up. Make sure you've got access to power and water to rinse your tools off when you're done. All this needs to be done prior to starting your first step of application. You want to make sure once you've poured the B into the A and you've stirred it up, that you stir it for at least 3 minutes. At that point, we're going to pour it into a clean white pail and we're going to let it sit for an additional 10. It's got to go through an induction stage. The 5000 binder is a cross-linked product, so I repeat, it must induce for at least 10 minutes. You want to make sure, guys, that when you're on the job and you're doing your 2 mixes, like I said, we always mix A and B in the original container and then pour it into a clean white pail. You need to make sure that you pour it into a clean white pail or a separate pail for your second mix. There's a certain amount of product that stays to the wall of the bucket that doesn't get any of the B activator mixed into it. And if you pour that out or dip your roller in it and it gets on your roller and rolls on the floor, it won't cure. So make sure you always pour it from the first container after you've mixed your A and B together into a separate container, remix it, and that's what goes on the floor. We're going to roll out tan 5000 binder over this garage floor, and then we're going to cover it with buff flakes. I want to talk to you guys about the flakes. When you pull them out of the box, you're going to want to pull the bag out of the box and then shake it around on the ground a little bit to loosen the chips up because they do pack. They actually form a tight cube. And also there's going to be some crushed chips in the bottom of the bag that you want to make sure they're blended throughout. Otherwise, when you use up all your chips and you get to the very bottom, you're going to have a different look or a different texture where those small chips are. As you can see by the rain falling behind me, that we're glad we're doing a PVA system or a Duraflake system inside today. That's the beauty of doing the Duraflake, is it's an inside product. So it doesn't matter what the weather is outside, you're actually doing your installation inside. So if we were doing a Hallmark system today, we'd be shot pretty much. But since we're doing a Duraflake, we're going to continue rolling, we're going to continue making money, and we're going to get this garage floor done, shoot this video, and have a great day doing it. Guys, you actually want this coating to be about 10 or 15 mils thick. A good way to check it without having a mil gauge on you is when you roll it out, it's going to leave the texture of your nap or your roller down, and then it actually softens out and disappears. That lets you know that you've got a nice, thick, even coat on. You see how thick that is? That's what we're looking for, about 10 to 15 mils. Coverage of the 5000 binder is 100 square feet per gallon optimum, 125 maximum. Don't roll your binder too thin. The flakes do not have enough millage to settle down into. Remember, you need to put it on at 10 to 15 mils thick so you can have enough product down for your flakes to settle into. Once the binder's rolled out, you don't want to roll out too much. We've rolled out about 400 square feet here. I'm going to blow flakes over the top so it doesn't tack up, so our flakes will have something to settle into. So roll half the floor, blow on your flakes, then roll the other half and apply the rest of the flakes. Don't worry too much about matching your product back in. Just overlap your binder a little bit, and then we're going to blow flakes back into what we've already sprayed so there's a seamless, flawless line. You'll never pick it up with your eye. Now that the DuraFlake system's been down for at least 8 hours and is totally cured, it's time to sand the flakes. We do that in two ways. One with a 100 grit sanding pad on the bottom of a pole sander, or with an electric orbital sander with a sanding pad on the bottom. Today, since the job's just over 800 square feet, we're going to use the electric buffer to get the main area, and then we'll do the corners and along the walls by hand. Okay, the floor's been sanded, broomed, and blown out, and now it's time to lay out the pattern, and I want to walk you through how we're going to do that. I've got Mike starting to lay out the pattern. We're going to do a tile at a 45-degree angle, and it's going to be a 36-inch tile, so they're going to be fairly large. He's actually measuring from the corner 36 inches out, and then he's going to measure from the corner 36 inches over to get our stripe line. We pulled center of the garage, but we found out after we pulled center that it wasn't the best visual effect for a focal point. In other words, where the center line was going to fall and the tile we're going to lay out, it wasn't in the best view for the customer. So we decided to go to the customer's focal point, which is the door that they're going to travel in and out of their garage. Also, that's the side of the car that they get out of the most. So we're going to actually pull from the customer's focal point and run the pattern across the garage that way. All right, we're going to lay out our pattern using our 3/8 aluminum tape. It comes black, bronze, silver, gold, 1/8 inch, and 3/8 inch. The black only comes in 3/8 inch. It's going to give us a nice wide grout line. We're going to pull our strike points, and then we're going to start pulling from there using our yardsticks. Since we're using a tape that has a protective coating on the back that has to be peeled off prior to sticking it down, we measure out the distance that we're going to need, pre-stretch the tape a little bit, then cut that piece of tape, then pull the backing off and stick it down. Okay, now that we're done laying out our pattern, it's time to apply our first coat of sealer. We're going to put ProGlaze 270 across this garage floor to get a high build, high gloss. The new ProGlaze, as opposed to the old ProGlaze, is giving you 25% more product, a longer pot life of about 30 minutes, and it actually flows a lot better. Some of the things you still want to be cautious of is you don't want to keep it in mass. If you keep the ProGlaze in mass, new or old, it's going to kick off very quickly. So once we mix it up, we're going to separate it into 2 buckets, and then we're going to start rolling with 2 different people. A couple of things I'd like to cover on the ProGlaze 270. Once you mix ProGlaze 270 A and B together, it's time to go to work. This product is exothermic. Although it does have a 30-minute pot life, once it's combined, you really want to start applying the product. So make sure you're ready to go to work before you apply A and B together. Whenever applying the 270 or the 210, you want to make sure that you back roll using a porcupine roller. So make sure anytime you're going to put down ProGlaze 270 or Super Seal 210 that you have a porcupine roller on hand. You're going to mix A and B together in the original container. Mix at a medium to slow speed. Don't form a vortex in there. We're going to mix it for about 2 minutes in the original can, and then we're going to pour it into a clean pail and remix it for about a minute, again at medium speed, and then apply the product. You want to make sure that when you're using the ProGlaze 270 that you have somebody mixing while you're working. And in other words, as you're running out of the batch you just put down, he's got the next batch ready to go back to back. Guys, exothermic, heat generating, 33 minutes. In mass, it's done. You want to make sure if your bucket starts to smoke, get it off the job and onto the side on some vegetation, or put it on a cloth or tarp or something, because it can get hot enough to overflow if it's a small bucket, or even melt through a cheap bucket. Another tip that you might want to use is actually using clamps on the garage doors. Depending on what kind of garage door they have, you can put a C-clamp at the base of the garage door in the track, so when the door comes down, it stops about 2 to 3 inches above the wet sealer on the floor. In addition to that, we'll put a roll of paper on the outside of the garage door to prevent any dirt or debris from blowing in underneath. If you use the clamps on the garage door, depending on what style, make sure you always use the manual release. Do not use the motor to lower the door down. And day 2, and once again, it's raining again. Thank God we're inside, guys. That's the beauty of interior work. It's raining outside, we're working inside, and you're still making money. We let that 270 sit on the floor overnight to cure up. Now we're actually going in, we're pulling off the baseboard tape, the 2-inch masking tape that we put around the baseboard to protect it from getting any 270 on it. We pull that off, we re-tape it prior to the application of the 6000. It's a really good idea to actually buff the surface of the 270 once it's cured with a green Scotch-Brite pad and a buffing machine. What it does is it actually dulls the surface down, creating some extra surface tension for the 6000 to bond to. Now that we scuffed the surface of the 270, it's actually time to apply the Aquathane 6000. It's a 2-component waterborne aliphatic urethane. What we're going to do is we're going to mix A and B together for about 2 minutes in the original container. Then we're going to pour it into a clean white pail and let it sit for 15 minutes. It has to go through an induction time. Once it induces, we're going to hit it again with a drill for about 30 seconds and apply it with a foam roller. One thing you're going to notice about the Kansas 6000, they come color-coded. There's going to be a blue square in the upper left-hand corner of both A and B, letting you know that those 2 components go together, so there's no mistaking different product lines. One thing you want to remember when rolling out the 6000, when you mix A and B together, it's going to look different than any of our other sealers. It's actually going to turn white, and you're rolling out a white film over your floor. Make sure you put it on thin, and within 30 minutes, it goes clear. Just remember, when you're putting down a 6000, make sure you roll it on thin. Don't exceed 7 mils, otherwise it'll form bubbles in the surface. Also, the 6000, since it does create air, once you mix A and B together, you are on a time clock. Do not mix this product up and plan on using it at a later date. Once you mix it, you need to use what you have. Within 2 hours, it's done. Do not try and save the product. 6000 coverage is about 150 to 200 feet a gallon, depending on what you're covering, from Duraflake to our Hallmark system to stone trowel. So figure about 150 square feet per gallon and you'll never get in trouble. All right, guys, we're actually going to install some backer rod and urethane caulk to separate the driveway from the garage floor. The old expansion material that was in there is rotted out, and the homeowner's really tired of the leaves and the debris and the ants that go in and out of there. So we're going to fill it up, plus it's going to make our job look a lot nicer. The width of the joint will determine what size backer rod you actually use. It goes from 1/8 inch all the way up to 3 inches. So measure the width of the joint and then determine what size backer rod you need to tuck down in there. Pull the backer rod aside, tuck it slightly down in there with your fingers, and a putty knife works real well just to get it down enough so when we apply the caulk doesn't all run to the bottom. You use less caulk and you get a nice finish. Guys, you always want to use painter tape when you're installing this system. Basically what it does, it creates a buffer zone for the caulk as you spread it out to come over the top. Also, when you peel the tape up, it leaves you nice, crisp, clean, straight lines. It really looks professional when you're done. All right, guys, this concludes the application of the Duraflake video. You got to see how to put pattern in the Duraflake. You also got to see how to mix and install the 270, how to mix and install the 6000, also how to install backer rod and urethane caulk. Just remember, follow the guidelines we set forth in these videos, and most importantly, follow your spec sheets in your manuals, and your applications will go down smooth and easy.